Hello, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. Anbadi and we've been talking about CSS. In CSS, previously we discussed about margins and paddings. Today, continuing from that point, basically the next tasks are to understand the width of the components within CSS and being able to control the background and the border of the CSS. So the task 20 is basically being able to control the width of your component. So in previous tasks we created a div tag, but obviously usually the div tag is from every component, in other words, for that matter, starts from one starting point to ending point. You are able to control that width, however, okay, by using margins and paddings, but still the width itself can also be controlled for that component. So for example, previously if we need to shorten this what we call component or with this tag, we had to control through what we refer to in terms of margins. Okay, so if I come back into my code and if I go back into paragraph dotted, the margin top, margin left, maybe for example I can give margin right, and this can be to 50%, if I remember correctly. We use that. So if I save it, if I refresh, so now this becomes 50%. But this is controlling through margins, which sometimes is not preferable. We just give margins to create some additional space. But if you want to ensure the size of a component, whether that's a paragraph tag or a div tag or any other component that has a specific size in terms of height and width, we simply use what we call the width attribute. Okay, so we have something called the width and height attribute of each component. So what you can do is, in fact, that you can come, let's leave it here, and we can come into our div tag. We can come here and we can specify something called not windows, sorry, width, width, and this width can be, let's just say 200 pixels. I don't know how big that would currently refer, and I can even have a height parameter for it as well. And this height can be, for example, 300 pixels depending on what we exactly want to do. So now what we have done, we have specified the width of this component. So Control S, come back here, see this is the blue component, and if I hit a refresh, now here you go. This automatically now becomes 200 width of 200 pixels in terms of width and 300 pixels in terms of height. So we have specified this component with a specific height and width. You can obviously reduce that as well. So I can have this depending on different sizes as well. So for example, if I'm creating a frame for images or a notice or for some other purpose that I want, I can even have this very small in size and refresh it. So now this is only of this particular size. All the content would try to adjust and fit within that. If the content is large, let's see, I don't know actually what would happen. So if I come back here and let me use Lorem here. Okay, let's just quickly fill this with Lorem, L-O-R-E-M, Lorem, press tab, and this would fill in the text. So for example, now I have a huge amount of text inside it. I go into CSS and I've specified very small tight width, which previously basically is that much big. And if I hit a refresh now and see this, what happens? Okay, okay. So the content basically overspills and come out of the container. Okay, so this div tag basically behaves like a container. If your content is too large, it will just overspill and come out of the container. Okay, so this is something that you have to be careful of, that your container size in terms of height and width enough to ensure that it encompasses all the component and doesn't overspill. So in other words, basically we use control this height and width to ensure that our components are tightly fit and are appropriately in size. So now I increase the size 300 to 205. Refresh it, now you see that it's nicely fit. So this can be like an image gallery where we can have a different components placed together and then they can have arrangement of a particular size. This can be like a division tags. This can be like a content area where there's a different boxes that we are arranged and content are specifiedly placed. Okay, so we use this height and width to control our component, and the remaining area is still there, so we can fill this remaining area with more div tags and we can position them accordingly. Okay, remember, if I put the div tag, another div tag here, okay, for example, block start, div tag, oh, not div, okay, nice div. This is second second div with Lorem, right? And let me just give it a new line. Control S. So this is, in fact, I don't even need this. Let me just remove this. This is a second div tag. So I have another div and I close this div tag as well. Okay. So very simply, we have two div tags. What would happen here? Should the next div come automatically on the new area, or will it be on the next line? Okay. So if I come back into my code, hit save, and again, there's no change. So basically this div and this div will both have same CSS style. they would both have same CSS appearance. If you want to segregate the appearance, we would use class. I will show you in a moment as well. So if I come back here, hit a refresh, now you would see that those div tag appears in next line. Okay, this is because every component by default behaves like a block. 1 block, 2 block, 3 block, 4 block, 5 block. They all appear in a sequential manner. They are not arranged in, for example, a grid layout, where 1 block, 2 block, 3 block appears in a single row. Okay. In other words, every component is basically organized in a row by row by row by order, not in the row and column manner. Okay. So each component is in the row form on a new line, and automatically they appear on a new line. Okay. If you want to bring this tag here, we can do that by working with positions tag. We will talk about that in future classes. Don't worry about that. So for now, this is separately available here. Okay, now what we need to do is if you need to control this div tag with the different attributes. So for example, I have these two div tags. I want the appearance of both the divs to be different. So what I do is I come back here and I can specify class. For example, this can be green. Okay, and this can be, for example, class is equal to bracket start blue. Okay. So we have two classes available now. So this is div blue, div class green. This means that there's a div tag, but there are two div tags, and I want the appearance of both the div to be separate. Okay, so I've created class. Then I go back into CSS, but in CSS I have not specified class. I've specified only div tag. What should happen? Should this div be applied on the class-based div or not? Because now we have specified that my div has a class, but in my CSS we have not mentioned it. So if I save it, if I go back into my code, should this appear as it is, or should it appear as a default without any style? Because there is no class specified in CSS. So if I had a refresh, you would note that still it would be applied same thing. Okay, that's because CSS says, okay, let me just cancel that. CSS says that even though it's a class based, but still it's a div. So this div now becomes a general global, not a global word would be clear, but general div that would applied on all div tags. So it's like a default setting that would be applied no matter if it belongs to a class or doesn't belong to a class. But creating a class means that you are ensuring that that particular div will have some additional attributes. So do be very careful about that. This div or this paragraph means that now every paragraph is of gray color. So for example, if I change this gray into yellow, I don't like this color in the font, but let's just try this and hit a refresh. If I come back, all paragraphs become yellow. I don't want that. Okay, but if I come back into my code, you would note that I have a different paragraph tag here. This is paragraph dotted, and I can have different paragraph tags, but the text has been changed for all because you have specified a paragraph, and now it means that all paragraphs would have a general tag. So it's applied basically on all paragraphs, even though there are paragraph classes. If there's a classes, now these settings would additionally be applied on that particular class only, not for generally everybody. Okay, so we have classified with respect to that. So this is like a general settings, this is the specific settings. This is a general settings, and we need to specify specific settings. So if I specify div, create a div tag block. For example, text color, text alignment can be, for example, center, semicolon. Just a color attribute can be, for example, I think what color should we use? Sometimes I just use green. Okay, margin, maybe we can have a margin as well. Let's just use margin. This time let's just use 100, or what we refer to as 100 should be fine. So I use a 100% of margin, 100 px margin should do the fine. Maybe background color can be red. Okay, semicolon, control S, go back into our code. But hang on. Now these are two div tags, okay, and they are both same. So what we need to do here is we need to come here and check that I have created a class called blue and a class called green. So if I come back here, div dot green green. Okay, now this green. Now this green dot basically is like a connector operator that connects your tag with your class name. So it's like a connector. It's like a bridge. It's like a point that has connection between two different entities. So class is a separate thing. Tag is a separate thing. Dot basically connects these two things together. So this now means that I have a tag div with a particular class name called green. Control S. I go back into my CSS. I have a div tag with a particular class called green. So now if I save it, go back into my code, hit refresh, come back here, and you would see that this particular div is now has a different style, different margins and different color and background. I can even have a different paddings or whatever I want. So I can control different tags based on classes. Okay, so each tag can have a separate class so that we can have different styles, or collectively I can have a same style and same pattern them as well. So I can say, for example, I don't want margin, I don't want background color, I just want the change of text color and text alignment to be center. So all of the settings would be applied from here. Only these two things would be changed. So Control S, go back into my code, hit a refresh. So all other settings are exactly same. The margins are same, the paddings are same. The only difference is the text color is changed. That's it. Okay, as simple as that. So this is basically what we do with respect to our sizes. So that width and height are basically what we do. So these two tasks 20, 21 basically control that particular attributes. Along with that, obviously we have a background and background solid pixel. Now this is something else. Border, we have been talking about border, but this is a solid green of 15 pixels. Means that we have a solid green border with a 15 pixel of border. Okay, so if I come into the next task very quickly, again the next task is also the same, but this time there is another style called outline of style. Now I won't go into it. You've understood what it does. Basically outside the border it applies another outline. So it's like a double border, double outline thing. So we have one border and then outside the border there's another outline, just to create that extra emphasis on a particular project or particular tag. Okay, so this particular output is here. So the black line is basically the border, the green can be our for example the dotted line. Okay, so outline, okay, so the green can be our outline. Okay, so this is just one another attribute that you can apply and create some more effects on your CSS styles. Okay, moreover we have been talking about this next class we would refer to in terms of bootstraps. I have been talking about that in previous as well, and I will upload that content as well. So thank you very much for watching. My name is Dr. Anbadi. If you are here for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe channel down below so that you can get updates on all the videos that I'm posting on web development. Okay, thank you very much. See you around. Fi amanullah.